Ciao.
Most developers don't have those kinds of resources. Even the big developers would have a hard time getting their app in front of every iPhone user. Well, we're going to solve that problem for every developer. Big.
By the way, because we all had government mandated jet lag day again.
Well, because it's the fallback thing.
It's the fallback
so I
one,
got
right?
Extra sleep. I mean, I don't know. I guess I did. I guess I'm fine.
I didn't. I stayed up an hour later. That tends to be what I do. Here's my Shelly Brisbin is here with us, everybody. She is the host of Parallel. Tell people again. I'm sorry, I'll actually write it down this time so I can tell them. But tell people relay.fm/parallel.
/parallel.
Okay, relay.fm/parallel. I'm not going to write it down because it gets too noisy. Hopefully I will get it right next time. I wonder, honestly, if we're just if we're all just so ready to be angry, because every now and then you hear, hey, you should just get rid of daylight saving time or daylight savings time, whichever one it is. They should stop changing the clock. They should leave it where it is right now, some people say. And other people say, no, we need to go to daylight saving time and keep it there. And I've seen so much more about that this year than I've ever seen before.
Really?
And I don't understand.
Because I haven't at all.
Really?
I see it. I've seen it in the past.
Yeah.
And the sort of common wisdom was that you when you complained about it, you said something like, thanks, President Bush, because apparently he signed something during his administration that brought daylight savings forward into perpetuity. I can't even remember what it was, but that was the joke.
I thought it just lengthened it. I thought it made it longer.
Maybe that was it.
Yeah, because it used to be.
It's been around for ages.
Yeah.
The only thing that annoys me about it, and this is first world podcaster problems, is when I'm trying to do some podcast scheduling with somebody in Europe and I don't know who's on what time. Oh, British summertime. I have to coordinate with that, and I'm on daylight.
Yeah, it's a bit ridiculous.
But it doesn't. I mean, an hour either way, I would be fine with it or without it. At this point, I'm sort of tired of the same old arguments. I'm like, okay, I get it. Some people hate it.
I am going to suggest a new thing to the mix. Just see what people think about it. And we just fall back.
Just keep falling.
Yeah, either once a year we just fall back, or every 6 months or however long it is, we just fall back. And eventually everybody will be living the nightlife like I do. And we'll see how they feel when they can't go to the bank. I don't know if that completely works, but you get the idea. Right. Speaking of anger, as we're wont to do, I don't know if this is really one of the anger things or not. Well, I don't know. So let's set the stage for this. Apple earlier this year enacted ATT. That's App Tracking Transparency. And when they first announced it last year at WWDC, 2020 at WWDC, almost immediately Facebook said, well, wait a minute, if I can't secretly follow people and see everything they're doing across every app and across the web, how I'm supposed to make my money? And so Apple said, all right, tell you what we'll do. We'll give you a few extra months to figure out something else to do. And so Facebook went on a tear by buying ads in the Wall Street Journal and New York Times saying, here are all the reasons this is terrible. Never really addressing the part where they're, following people and tracking everything they do and using that to tailor ads. And so when App Tracking Transparency finally hit, when it actually was implemented earlier this year, flash forward 6 months, and apparently App Tracking Transparency has lost social media companies somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 billion, I think I read, in ads, sort of across the board. At the same time, for the first time ever, advertising is now Apple's number one service. Like, if you look at the way that Apple makes its money in services, it's always been the App Store, and there are the cloud services, and then there's Apple Care. Of course, Apple does get money from Google. That's folded into the advertising service as well. But advertising, even with the money that it was getting from Google before, advertising now is Apple's biggest services moneymaker. And that's the kind of thing that you're starting to hear from a few different people. It doesn't really seem cool. Nick Clegg, who I hear British people laugh every time his name gets mentioned because he is apparently a completely irrelevant individual in the UK anymore. But he is now actually working for Facebook, and he's saying, what Apple is doing is just a land grab. All they're doing is shutting out other advertisers so they can make money. Apple, of course, says they're actually trying to protect the privacy and security of their users. I'm wondering if it can be both.
Well, as you pointed out, what Apple prevented Facebook and other social media companies from doing is the tracking part. They didn't say if Facebook had a website and wanted to put an ad on the website, Apple doesn't make a big X there. Apple doesn't prevent Facebook from advertising. Doesn't prevent from putting advertising on their site either.
If you'll allow me really quickly, I want to clarify one thing. They're not even preventing Facebook from tracking. All they're saying is you have to have permission.
Yeah.
If Facebook wants to make a good enough case for why they should be able to track me, they should go ahead and try to make that case. And then if I say yes, they get all the ad money in the world. And if I say no, that's the brakes, because it turns out maybe I don't want to be tracked. I apologize. Go ahead.
Yeah, because the way that the do not track, give permission to track pop-ups work in iOS is it says, we want to provide you more personalized ads. If that's something that you as a consumer find valuable and you understand that tracking is a means by which they say they're going to provide you better advertising, then you have the option to let them in. And in fact, even if you've decided that you don't want to let them in, you can go back later and say, you know what, Facebook, I misjudged you. I would love it if you would track me everywhere I go.
Right. I miss having a target secretly on my back. Let's talk about a different one. Craig Federighi spoke at a conference last week, the Web Summit, I believe in Portugal. The whole time talking about the security risks of sideloading. And of course, there are a lot of people who say and have said for a very long time, well, they just don't want apps outside of the App Store because, then they lose their 30%. I find myself occasionally somebody will make an argument to me that says, actually, here are all the reasons that we think sideloading should be okay. And every now and then I'm like, yeah, okay, I can kind of get that. Except when they talk about the privacy and the security part of it, when they talk about the vetting that they do in the App Store, which is not ironclad by any stretch. But when they talk about all that stuff, I think about my dad. I think about my dad, who I feel certain has an Android phone just riddled with malware because my dad believes, the worst parts about humanity. And so he will go to somebody who says, well, here's all the terrible stuff you need to know about. I feel certain he's being tracked 9 ways to Sunday because of that kind of thing. I think about people who aren't necessarily digitally savvy, who would just end up going anywhere and downloading anything. And of course, the question I have is, while Apple does make that 30%, is there any chance that they're both making the 30% and also being genuine about their privacy and security concerns?
It's a lot easier for Apple if they don't have to deal with the ramifications of sideloading. Because if you let people sideload, you're still going to have people coming into the Apple Store and saying, my phone has gone crazy, or you're going to have all sorts of unintended consequences to do with people hacking into phones. And so for them, it's not only a way for them to protect their advertising the revenue from app developers through the App Store, but it also is just a lot less of a headache for them. And I separate it because I have issues with some of the justifications Apple makes for charging 30%, not for apps, but for services associated with the apps that you put on your phone, because that's the way the economy works now. It used to be it was 30% of the $5 app that you buy, and now it's 30% of the services that are associated with that app. And that's, to me, a separate conversation, because sideloading, and Apple wants to put them together because Apple is saying, we're preventing sideloading for your safety and security, which I think is absolutely valid. We're also preventing sideloading for our safety and security, and so that we don't have to spend so much money, time, and effort dealing with the consequences of sideloading. I mean, have you been in the Google Play Store? I mean, it's a crazy place. And the occasions that I have to go there to research something, or that I've put something on an Android phone, the likelihood that you are completely aware of what you're getting is far lower. And some people don't buy into the App Store ecosystem realizing that they've made that kind of choice. But yeah, I think about my mom is the same way. If she's downloading something to her iPad, neither I or Apple would particularly like to have to deal with the potential for viruses and hacking and all that stuff. And that's worth some money. Although, again, the money that Apple is getting is not from the app, because she probably didn't buy the app. She probably bought a service that was associated with the app, which is a separate thing.
Coming up later in the week, Shelly and Ken kick around a question put to macOS Ken listeners a few weeks ago. Is it still news when Apple follows the law in China? Plus, Shelly has things she expects from Apple in 2022 and things she wants from Apple in 2022. She'll share both. And, turning the tables, Shelly has a question for Ken. Who would he invite to his dinner party? That's a full week in a few minutes.
Back now with Shelly Brisbin, host of Parallel online at relay.com/parallel.
Hey, again, it's relay.fm.
See, I knew I should write it down. Oh, well. You know what I was thinking about, actually? I was thinking about your cool Twitter name, at Shelly. That's a good way to follow her as well, just at Shelly. And there you go.
At me, but don't at me.
All right, so there are a couple things I was thinking about when you were talking in the last segment. Playing devil's advocate, does Apple not deserve something for having a safe place to make for people to make that other money? I mean, you're saying, okay, so they're taking 30% of services or 30% of like a service that is sold in the App Store or sold in an app. Do they deserve any kind of commission for that?
Sure they do. And again, that's why the changes in the economy are kind of relevant, and that I don't think people, when they have these conversations, think about, because when we all started downloading apps to our phones, we might pay nothing or $1 or $5 or $10 for the app as a one-time thing. And of course, I acknowledge that the whole software industry in general has gone the services and subscription route. So it's not that we can change back to what we had before. But if you have a service that is a premium service, whether it be a streaming service or a meditation app, or whether any sort of app that provides a service through the function of an app and whose price is based on the value of that service, not based on how much load it puts on the App Store or how much effort it took to subscribe or maintain the safety and security of that store, then all that of that experience, that all becomes gravy for Apple. It becomes, oh, well, the more super expensive services we can apply in the App Store, the more extra money Apple gets that isn't really a function of what it costs for them to maintain that service. But of course, Apple deserves something for that. And we are paying for it, both in terms of the devices we buy, because sure, hardware devices prices are related to what it costs to make them, but there's an incredible amount of profit in there as well. And then Apple does provide, free access to things like iCloud, whether it be mail or whether it be storage. We get all sorts of stuff by being in that ecosystem, and Apple has to get paid through some mechanism, and part of it is through the purchases that we make, and part of it is through the commissions that developers pay back, because most people don't have just stock Apple apps.
So what's the magic number? 30% feels too high for you. I'm curious, what would be a fair amount?
It's hard to say, because if you make it, I would almost rather it be, and they've already done the graduated thing where your payout is smaller if you are a developer with smaller revenue.
Right.
But I would almost say make it graduated based on the cost of the service or subscription that you're buying. So if I download an app and I pay $100 a month subscription, which obviously is super high, and I can't think of a specific app that fits into that. But if I buy, charge less after the first $10 or $15 a month or whatever, and that's an entirely arbitrary number. But why should Apple get $30 a month from me because I have subscribed to another company's product and the app is the mechanism by which I subscribe to it?
Well, I can make the argument, but people have heard it. I mean, really quickly, it's because I don't have to think about it. Because if I'm doing it in the App Store, I don't have to think about like the security of my payment. I don't have to think about any of those things. One day that might happen. And the day that happens, this whole thing really starts to crumble. But for now, there hasn't actually been a significant breach where people who have their payment information stored with Apple have to worry about that. Whereas if there's some service that everybody's talking about, but I've never heard of it, but everybody's talking about it, and so I kind of want to try it, if I have to go and put my payment information in there through who knows what payment processor and who knows what's happening on that end of it. I mean, the fact that they're in the Apple ecosystem, I look at it, oh, how much does it cost? Oh, it's in the App Store. I don't have to think about it. I go ahead and click, pay. I double click and the money is gone. And that's the ease that developers get. They've eliminated a huge hurdle, which is, wait, where am I putting my information? Nowhere. My information is exactly where it's always been. Gimme, gimme, gimme.
Well, again, I think that you can the amount of money that you pay on a per monthly subscription, or maybe it's a game and you're paying for tokens or whatever the in-game stuff is, the amount of safety and benefit you get is the same whether you're paying $1 or $100, and Apple just gets to skim the cream off. I do think, though, that what you're saying goes back to the argument of sideloading, that Apple, by preventing sideloading, forestalls the eventuality, not necessarily of a payment breach, although probably it does too, but it forestalls the eventuality of, oh crap, all of the App Store is completely hacked. It's completely, been destroyed by some sort of trick that people have been convinced to do some sort of sideload. And again, that benefits us and it benefits Apple.